This is the North Georgia Life Podcast. Embrace life where you live. Welcome back to the North Georgia Life Podcast. It is Jake, your host, and today's episode, as we talk about in the beginning of the episode, is one of my, and actually kind of all the way through, one of our family's favorite annual traditions. Every summer, we go to this place. It was one of the first places I wanted to have on the podcast a few years ago when we started. And as we talk about in the episode, they were going through a management transition, so just wasn't a great time for that. But finally, we have them. We are at Wildwood Outfitters, one of the best kept secrets in North Georgia. And if you're anywhere within a reasonable commute to this place, it needs to be an annual thing that you take your family, your friends, maybe your department to. It's a great time to get away. It's just remember kind of the simple things in life and just have a great time with the people that you want to hang out with. And it is, as we say in the podcast, it is part of embracing life where you live. So hope you enjoy. I know you're going to enjoy. What am I talking about? Make sure you listen all the way to the end because we got a little something for you at the very end. You guys know how to find us, North Georgia Life Podcast at Facebook and Instagram. You can always email us at northgeorgialifepodcast@gmail.com if you have suggestions of places for future episodes. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started at Wildwood Outfitters. Welcome back to the North Georgia Life Podcast. Is Jake, your host, and today we are at one of our favorite places. So I have wanted to have this location on the podcast for probably a couple years now, and it is someplace that I'm a little hesitant to share with you because I'm afraid you all are going to take up my spots. So our family has been coming here to Wildwood Outfitters for almost, I think, 6 years. Last summer was the first summer we didn't make it, and everybody let me know in our family that we had missed one of our family annual staples. So we're here with Scott today, who is the manager of Wildwood Outfitters. If you don't know where it is, are we technically in Cornelia? Is it a Cleveland?
Cleveland.
Cleveland.
It's Cleveland address.
So we're kind of between Cleveland, Claremont, Demarest, Clarksville, in that area. But it's right on the river. And if you've not been here, what I tell everybody when we have our own little soapbox, because we love this place so much, is you forget you're in Georgia when you go down the river.
Yeah.
It is, and nothing against Georgia. Georgia's beautiful. It's been my home for 17 years. I don't ever want to leave. I've also been out west, and you kind of feel like if you don't remember where you're actually at in some areas, that you're out in Wyoming or Montana somewhere. It's just so pretty and so scenic, and this is why I don't want to share it with people because it's going to be.
You got to share it.
I was going to say it's going to be standing room only soon enough. But Scott, thanks for your time. It is Friday, and it is probably going to have the phone start ringing in the background, so just forgive us if this is a little bit choppy, but this is the start of their season and just a busy weekend. Scott, thanks for your time.
You bet.
I know you got a lot of stuff to do. So give us a little history on you, how you end up here. Are you we didn't talk about, are you a Georgia native?
I came here when I was in high school in 1971 in Roswell, and I was raised pretty much on the Chattahoochee River down there in Roswell. So we went down on the weekends and swam in the river and played in our rafts and got in tubes and stuff and went down. Yeah. We're part of the Great American Raft Race, where they used to have it here in the Atlanta area. Did you ever?
No.
It was.
I've done a bunch of interviews with people that are associated with all things water, and no one has ever mentioned the raft race.
Oh, it's infamous, I should say. It was started by one of the radio stations back in the 70s. Huh. And they said 1 week we were going to have a raft race. Well, over the next 5-6 years, there were people who had built Viking boats that they rode down. There were people that were putting Volkswagens on inner tubes and going down.
Chamber of Commerce people, if you're listening, this needs to happen immediately again.
It was so much fun that they stopped having it. It got a little out of control, but it was a lot of fun. And in the annals of Atlanta history, those who were here in the 70s will remember the Chattahoochee Raft Race. But we can't do that here because we've got more rapids. Our river's more shallow.
I'd like to see you try to get a Volkswagen raft down there.
Yeah, so anyway, I grew up loving the river, and I was a Boy Scout, and whenever I was old enough, I started camping in the mountains with my friends. And then we, I went off, got a job, and worked Coca-Cola corporate for about 6 years. And but I always came to the mountains on the weekends with my friends. Then whenever I had my family, we started coming up to the mountains. On New Year's Eve, it would get so, all your friends have parties and you start to get embarrassed because you don't know where to go on New Year's Eve. Or you go to dinner and there's 3,000 people waiting for a 28-seat restaurant. So we started going to Vogel on New Year's Eve. And we went for 24 years in a row.
Wow.
To Vogel. So we've always loved the mountains. And along the way, one day a friend called and said, "Hey, Scott, do you want to go paddle on the river?" And I said, I didn't know at all about the upper Chattahoochee River. And I said, yeah. And so we went. And I was in the front of his canoe. And if you've ever been in the front of a canoe, that's a good reason to paddle your own boat. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And by Wednesday of that week, I bought my own boat.
Wow.
And about a year later, my 9-year-old started paddling with me. And he and I paddled, I want to say, every weekend in the summer for about 5 years.
Wow.
We know the river really well. So to me, the river's a spiritual place. And I just love it. And I went off, I had a business for 30 years, and then I taught school for 10 years. And I was retired, and the guy who had been running it for 17 years, a guy named Carl Kirkpatrick, who I call the sage of the river, because he's always got wisdom to share if you know the right questions.
It's like Yoda.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But he was going to retire after 17 years. So I talked to the owners. I had loved the place, but I hadn't been coming in about 12 years. But they were looking for somebody to manage it, and I was looking for a chance to get on the river. So I asked them if they'd be interested in me managing it, and they said yeah.
Wow.
And they said I could run it however I wanted to. And like it was my own business, and I'd had businesses my whole life. So I've changed a little bit, but I absolutely love it. And the river's a beautiful place to be every day of the summer, and even on overcast Fridays in the spring.
Yeah. From a operations perspective, for people who have never been here, don't know anything about this, one of the reasons we love it, aside from the scenery and everything, is it's super easy to get to. I mean, from Atlanta, it's one turn. Literally, it is one turn.
It's 1 hour and one turn.
Yes. If you can't do that, something is wrong.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We should be Atlanta's whitewater home because we're only an hour and a half center. And you come out here, and I call our river the elementary school of whitewater.
Yes.
Because we manage the river from Helen to Lake Lanier pretty much. All right, and we have 4 sections, but 3 sections that we usually put people on. The first section is just all swift water. So if you just want to see what it's like to get up and enjoy the mountain, the river, you've got something that's calm without scaring you. The second section, and they're all about the same length. The second section is all swift water, but it's got one rapid in it. So if you want to taste the water, and hopefully not literally, although about 30% do. If you want to taste a rapid, you go through it right there, and it's a beautiful spot and a great spot to hang out on the river after you go through that river, just on the rocks and stuff. And then if you go into section 3 after that, then it's class 1 and 2 rapids. But those are all considered novice rapids.
Yeah.
And but once you go down that section 3 one time, then the next time you go down it, maybe you don't just go straight down it. Maybe you start eddying out behind rocks. And maybe the time after that, you start to learn about peeling into the river. And maybe the time after that, you start to look at low water lines. And you develop. So I say 1st through 6th grade of whitewater paddling, you can learn here. It's not just point A to point Z. It's an education along the way, depending on how much you want to get into the whitewater.
And I think your term, the elementary of whitewater, is for people who go from having never been on whitewater or a river or whatever to the Nantahala or something like that.
Right.
It may not be it may not be the best thing for you in the future of your PTSD counseling.
I say go into the Nantahala. I call the Nantahala the middle school. Yeah. Because people can go up there where the water's faster and it's more consistent, and it's a lot colder. But then you get a little bigger water, and you do the same thing there that you did here, and that is you learn how to eddy out in faster water, and you learn how to do different technical skills in faster water.
Yeah.
So I call it the middle school.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't just step from kindergarten to middle school.
And this is a great, every time we're here, we see other families. So it is, you don't need necessarily to be an adult, but you've got to have adults with you, and we're sitting here amongst the liability waivers, all that stuff. But you do some water safety training before anybody gets on the river,
without a doubt,
and give them kind of the landmarks of what's where along the way. But it is for us. So we talked about before, I'd been around water for most of my life, but my wife and our kids had not, and so going from, to me, the Nantahala is fun and exciting, whatever, but it is not probably the first step in wisdom for anybody in terms of making them feel like they want to go back anywhere close to the river ever.
Unless you're in a raft, when it's a lot safer and a lot more fun.
Right, and what I love about, there's like a million things I love about here, is I hate canoeing or kayaking on the lake. Because I want to be lazy. I want to enjoy myself. I don't want everywhere I go to be something I have to work for. When you're on the river, the river moves you. So I like the fact that I don't have to work and the river pushes me down. You can paddle, or you can just kind of hang out. And that's the thing. If you've ever done a tandem anything, there's always one person who doesn't really realize that they're not on the same wavelength with the other person in terms of who's paddling how much of that trip, and then by the end of it, you're like, we need some time away.
Yes, and therefore the solo boat was made.
That's right.
Everybody's gone on whitewater rafting trips, not everybody, but a lot of people have gone on whitewater rafting trips, and when they're out there in those rafts and they're going through the rapids, there's always people out in individual boats. And you're thinking, man, I'd like to get in one of those, but I don't know if I should or not.
Right.
And it looks like a lot of fun. So everything that we rent is sit-on-top kayaks. So you're in your own boat. Now you can have a single or a tandem, but it does give you a chance to get out there on your own and control it. Because it is a novice-level river with novice-level rapids, and you should be able to, you only have to be 10. We like you to be a mature 10.
Yeah.
To paddle your own boat.
Yeah.
I have scouts come out here and paddle their boats and stuff. But it gives you that independent feeling on the water that you don't get when you're in a raft.
Yeah.
And it's like looking at a wave from the beach or paddling through a wave. It's a lot bigger when you're actually there.
Right. Right.
And I think that kids have a great time on this river, and adults too.
Yeah. The first time we came down with our kids, I think they were in maybe late middle school-ish, somewhere in that range, and it was like the greatest thing ever. And it was like, we're going to go back every summer because they'd never done anything like it, and it was exciting but not intimidating and scary, and it was just like, this is literally, I mean, from our house it was 35 minutes. I mean, it's so easy to get to.
And I call it adrenaline charging but not life-threatening.
Yes. That's a great way. That needs to be on a t-shirt. So you mentioned you've got three sections that you do of the Chattahoochee. The farthest north is about where?
At the old Saltee store on Highway 17, where we actually put you on either Chickamauga Creek or Saltee Creek, and where you drop right into the river right there at the top. Okay. And that takes you down to the Highway 255 bridge. Okay. That's about a 3-hour trip because it's not very fast or rocky, or it's just a good, nice, smooth flowing river. And that's section 1. And we do that probably the least because, to be honest, we have limited staff, and that's a 25-minute ride, and then we load people out and we put them in the boat, we put them on the river, and then we drive back. So I lose a guy for an hour and a half, sometimes even 2 hours to go up there. Yeah. So I only put people on section 1 by appointment. But I want to try and open up that more this summer. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people who don't want rapids. Right. Yeah. Who want first and second grade, period.
That's right. And then the next section 2, is about where to where?
Section 2 goes from the Highway 255 bridge, as we were talking earlier. Everything seems to start and end at a bridge. Yeah. So it goes from the Highway 255 bridge, south of Helen, down to the Highway 115 bridge. All right, which is about 5 miles up the road here. And it's about 5.5. I think it's about 5 miles, 5.5 miles on the river. I'm not exactly sure. I should know that, but I don't know that.
That's all right.
But that's from section 255 to 115. It's a cool section because it is mostly swift water with just a few turns and some white water. But then you come around to Smith Island. It's called Smith Island Rapids. And it was most cases with the river. To the right, there's lots of space.
Right.
But the water spreads out thin over lots of space, so it's too shallow. So you go to the left of the island, and it's a little two-stage rapid. And once you're in it, you're committed.
You're in it.
And there's one, I try to show everybody when they go, there's one what we call tip rock down at the very bottom.
Yeah.
So if you're not aware of that, you make it all the way through the rapid, and that one little rock will take you off. But we try to let most people know about that rock.
That's funny.
Yeah. And that's great. That's a former governor lives right up there. Roy
really?
Barnes lives right up there.
Okay.
He rescued 3 people for us last summer.
This is what you get in your retirement.
Hey, I got your boats in the backyard. Come on down and get them.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but that's great. And then you pedal out for half an hour to 115, to the 115 bridge, where we had our original store. Can I tell you a little bit about the store?
Yeah.
It's been owned by the Gale family for 52 years. And 1972, Dave Gale Sr. started it in downtown Helen. He was a contractor in Atlanta and came up here to sort of chill a little bit and live in the mountains. And he started a canoe outfitters, with the old aluminum canoes.
Yeah.
And he's where Betty's store, I think it is, or Wildwood store is up in Helen, was where they started. But this was 72, so Helen was just really starting to get momentum there, just going into its major building stage. Then in like 81, they bought a place at the 115 bridge. There was a store there that the lady was ready to sell. So they moved from Helen down to the store there. And they had a place in downtown Helen, or not downtown, but just outside in the Chattahoochee Village, which was a retail store. But that was only open for a few years. And then, but they were always working out of here, which was called Sandy Bottoms. It was a park called, not park, but it was just, I guess, a public area called Sandy Bottoms. Then it came for sale and they bought this lot. And then they came down here and built this building on it. And that's when they moved Wildwood right here, because the store we had on 115, they decided to move the bridge.
Oh.
And when they moved the bridge, they moved it over right. So traffic was a little too good, if you catch my drift.
That's what we call eminent domain, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. So they came down here and then kept it down here for 20 years or so, and then, or 30 years, and then sold it back to the state when the state was collecting a lot of the property along the Chattahoochee. And now we're a concessionaire here, but we've been here for 52 years.
Wow.
So the Gale family has done a really good job of keeping this thing from the very beginning. They've kept people on the river. They used to do 100-mile races from Helen down to the other side of the Buford Dam.
Wow.
They've been real involved in the outdoors. So he owns a construction company. They run the bowling center up in Clarksville. And he's just always had this place. He's always kept this place. And they've been great about letting me do what I want to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm lucky. I couldn't ask for a better situation.
Yeah. We started coming when Carl was still here.
Yeah.
And then we've obviously seen you, or maybe we haven't seen you, but somewhere in the last couple of years we've been here. And I was a little nervous when I heard that Carl was leaving, because I'm like, oh no, like, are they gonna get some, corporate outfit in here and change
well,
it?
I'm worried about that too. And you know what? When I came in here, that was my challenge, because for 30 years I owned a marketing company in Atlanta. After I left Coke, I was back in like '86. I started my own marketing company. I did that for the next 30 years. And I came up here, and I initially, I read a book called Siddhartha by Herman Hesse, and it's a great story about a guy who ends up just spending his life on the river, ferrying people back and forth across the river, and gives him a chance to think about life and think about everything, and just to understand life on a more meaningful level. And the river's always been a very spiritual place for me. I've mentioned that earlier. So I love the idea of sharing that spirit of the river with everybody. But at the same time, I owned a marketing company, man.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the other whitewater companies in the stores in the area were closing. And all of a sudden, there was a huge opportunity here for me to sell more stuff at retail. And there was a huge opportunity. And all the stuff that I learned about, or that I executed in marketing for 30 years, man, I want to be a simple man, but doggone it, there's opportunity here. I mean, it's the truth. And so my big challenge was to come in here, grow the sales, but not lose the feeling that I used to have with my son when we came every day in the summer.
Yeah.
I wanted to continue to build it, but I wanted to do it in a way that the not old people, but the regulars, the core group, didn't feel that I was the corporate guy coming in here. I started boiling peanuts every Saturday, you know, and then I started to have live music every now and then. But it was all things that I tried to be low key so that my core customers would never feel alienated.
Yeah.
And I think it's working so far.
Yeah.
You know, we're growing our, the industry standard is right now, according to paddle sports magazines and the polls things, is that we're losing our core base of paddlers. There's a lot more people that are starting to paddle, but they're paddling on an infrequent basis. They're not that core base that was there paddling on a higher frequency basis. So I want those people to come. So I immediately took a shuttle and I just like made that for those people. Private boaters always have an immediate shuttle available here. And then I took the regular rental stuff and I put it on an hourly schedule. And we put our reservation system online and we got a new POS system. We just upgraded to be a modern store with modern technology. But it's all been trying to do it covertly without offending anybody.
Yes.
But yet still we have to be polished enough for the nice people, because again, another statistic within the paddling industry is that a higher level income is paddling now. And I think that's because as age is going up, you know, more people are making more money, and there's a lot of retirees. I got a lot of people over the age of 60 that paddle, a lot. You know, and it's like, can I help you with your boat? No. That's how they measure whether or not they're in shape or not. If we can't carry our boat up the stairs, we shouldn't be paddling.
Right. Yeah. And you don't have to carry it. You can just drag it.
But I am working on a roller system.
Hey. Yeah. You touched on a few things, but I think from one of the things I was really intrigued to have a conversation about on the way up here was with whether it's an ownership transition, management transition, a new way of doing something, or you're acquiring a business that has been a staple or something like that in maybe in the outdoors sector, but maybe somewhere different. Maybe it's a bakery or a restaurant or whatever. From a couple nuggets of just tactical advice or how you did what when in that sequence of over the last, because it wasn't all immediate. There needs to be a little bit of a genteel phasing in of those things. One, from just an operations perspective, but two, from what you said of we don't want people who have been coming here forever to all of a sudden come here one day and they'll be like, well, what is happening? What have you done? And so just how you went about that and just
Well, I'll tell you what, whenever I quit, when I stopped my agency, we had some things happen and I just decided I was tired of doing it after that length of time. I went back to school to what I thought would fade off into academia. I thought I'd go become a college professor and do something. But along the way, I ended up being a high school teacher at a high school in Gwinnett County. And so then they asked me to teach entrepreneurship with the economic development people in Snellville. The curriculum was not great, so I sort of rewrote the curriculum and we started to push that. And we started to study entrepreneurship an awful lot. We did that for the next 5 years. So the stuff that I studied, and our objective was to get, this alludes back almost to a conversation you and I were having earlier. We had Title I school kids who either didn't have the means or the desire to go to college, and we wanted to address how they could still find work and how they could start businesses and how they could turn passions into profit. So we studied that with those kids for the next like 6-7 years. So everything I learned in there was based on the traditional entrepreneurship development model. But then we got into a lean startup model, which was set by a guy named Eric Reese out in California, that takes this whole entrepreneurship development thing and squeezes it into one little small package, a 4-step process called the lean startup. And that's what I did every time that I came into here. Was lean startup is a 4-stage process when you're developing a new business. It starts with a hypothesis. I want to do this. It goes into the proposal, what you plan to do. All right, and then you build your minimum viable product. All right, and then you do customer discovery. And then after a bit of the customer discovery, then you go to a assessment of the discovery, and then you go back up to your hypothesis, and you see if you have to change it or adjust it. So it's a cycle, and each time around that cycle, an iteration, right? You learn a little bit more until you hopefully fine-tune it and get it in. That's the approach that I took here. The first year we came in, and I mentioned, we started boiling peanuts. Well, you know what? That's pretty popular in North Georgia, but I didn't know if it would work or not. But that was a little bit, so we tried it, and it worked well. So I kept that up. But other times, I thought that I would build a season pass and see if we could get people to rent multiple times over the course of the season to try to drive frequency of their visit. But that didn't work, you know, and I talk to people, why didn't that work? We go through that customer discovery. So everything that I do is just like any other business or any other entrepreneurial business or any other really function. Hypothesize what you need to get done. Try it. Don't just think about it. Assess the thing and get real feedback from your customers, and then either expand it or get rid of it. And our retail sales have done the same kind of thing. You know, we were a lot more into apparel and stuff. But as other stores changed, our customers' desires changed. So we started to get into a little bit more. You know, we spent $2,000 on paddles. You know, in the next year, we spent $5,000 on paddles. You know, to bring it in because that was what the customers wanted. So it's that same cycle. Just look at that little cycle over and over and over again, and it's described as the Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And you know, hypothesize, execute, get customer feedback. Hypothesize, execute, get customer feedback. And that's what I've done. Plus, I paddled for 20 years, so I had an idea about what people wanted.
And you thought this was just a place for canoes and kayaking. You just had a little business masterclass here.
But you know what? Yeah, we have to do that to be strategic because it goes back to that covert approach that I said. I don't want anybody to feel less at home, to be themselves, to be free, to have a spiritual experience, to get away from their problems at home. You know, I want everybody, I don't care if you come up here to party, I don't care if you come up here with your friends, at some point you come back up just to think. And I don't want anybody to be alienated from doing that. But I want to grow the business.
Because y'all have a great spot and a great section of the river. I don't know if there's a bad section of the river, but from a life on the river, best memories, funniest stories.
You know, I wish, you know, how many times have people said this? I wish that I had written down every day just one thing that had happened each day. Because there have been some unbelievable stories and things that that I've already forgotten. Yeah. You know, but people ask me, because we have races down the river, and we're doing a thing called the Upper Chattahoochee Cup Series. I hope that we'll get a lot of racers for it this year. You know, it's been growing. And they say, how long does it take? But people come here just for the day. They say, how long does it take to go down the river? And I say, well, you know, the fastest guys could do it in like 42 minutes, 43 minutes. Good night. You know, and that's 4.5 miles in 43 minutes. But my son and I used to do it in 7.5 hours. Yeah. You know, because, you know, we would stop and we would throw rocks. We would go back up to the top of the rapid without our boat and ride the rapid with, you know, just swimming. You know, we'd get a snorkel and we'd go look under the rapid and see if we saw anything under the water. So I guess probably my best memory about this place is, you know, time I spent with my kid, you know, on the river. Yeah. It's just absolutely beautiful, and it's a great way to share spirit with your child. I remember one day we were at Horseshoe and it was about 4:30, and I said, well, Cody, I guess we got to go. I need to get some. And I stopped and I said, no, you know, everything we do at home is so we can have this time here. Let's just wait till the sun goes away. And we spent the rest of the day at the rapid. That's awesome. It's just a beautiful river. So there's lots of great memories. And then the times that I've been troubled, you know, and I can come up here and I can sit in my boat on the river and watch the water go by. You know, those are the best memories. We had a girl, one of the funniest things that I think of is we had a girl a couple years ago come by, and she rented a boat and they took off. And about half an hour, 45 minutes later, we got the call, which we get every now and then. They lost their paddle, they lost their boat, come get us off the side of the river. So a bunch of us were going down the river in our canoes, and we paddled over to where she was, and we paddled up. Well, she wanted to jump in our canoes with us. And she still had her boat, she still had her paddle. We're like, no. And she's like, oh gosh, I can't go down the river. I can't get in the river. We're like, you got to go down the river. You don't have any choice. But look, we'll put somebody in the front, somebody in the middle, somebody in the back, and you get in the river. She's like, oh no, I can't. And she would go, and we went probably another half mile down the river through some rapids. She was screaming all the way. I'm saying, you know, paddle like you're at the gym, not at the mall. You know, and you know, and we finally got halfway down to one place where we could rescue people, and we called the van, and they came and they picked her up and they brought her back. Well, that was bad, but then the big thing was the next year she brought her son back to camp. Wow. And we're sitting here, and all of a sudden the door opens and she goes, I'm back! And we're like, oh my God, no! I had to take her out and introduce her again to all the people that had rescued her the year before.
Oh my gosh!
And but you know, she took like 3 people down with her that day because she had such a good time that day that she got rescued. And she did the entire river this day.
That's
and
hilarious.
She brought her friends, and she loved it.
That's awesome.
And I'll lay you money we see her again this summer.
I bet. Yeah. So I was trying to think when I was thinking about that question, like our best memories here, and so we've got 2. So we had a friend of ours that her husband had passed away that year. Just unexpected kind of thing, and so we were going out on our family thing, and we were like, let's bring this person with us. Maybe her daughter came with us. I can't remember who all. We had a bunch of people. First little rapid we went down. Somehow her kayak flipped over, whatever.
Somehow.
And she's like freaking out, whatever. And I look over and I'm like, stand up. She's flailing around like she's in like the deep end. I'm like, you're literally in like 2.5 feet of water. Like, just stand up. And she was dying laughing. I think it was probably the first time that she had a good laugh since her husband had passed away.
Oh, that's great. See, at the river's spiritual,
yeah,
man.
And just was a good just emotional reset. So if you have people in your world who just need that head clearing time to
reset.
just the emotional reset of life, this is a great place for it because it's not scary, and worst case scenario, you're probably going to be in about 3 feet of water. You could stand up if you get tossed. I think it was the year before. I can't remember which year. They all kind of bleed together, but we had not. So there's the nice thing about the section we go down. So typically we go down section 3. For us, it takes us somewhere about 3.5 hours. We're not, just lollygagging the whole time, but we're not like speed paddling either. So we stop a couple times along the way. But there's a little beach area there's actually a couple little beach areas that you can, bring, sandwiches and whatever and just rest. That year I think we maybe had a couple of the kids' friends with us. Anyway, we ran out of food too early. And so my wife and I were like, no, y'all eat, we'll be fine, whatever. So we get down, and it's like probably the last hour, and we're looking at each other, we're like, I'm gonna eat one of these little turtles. There's about 18 million little turtles.
Oh, yeah.
And no joke. This is like Elijah and the ravens in the Old Testament. There is a pack of Lance sour cream and chive crackers that starts floating down the river between our 2 kayaks.
No way.
And I look at her, and she looks at me, and we're like, "Is that food?" we went. This is.
No way.
We have witnesses.
That's funny.
It was a vacuum-sealed, dry pack of Lance sour cream and chive crackers, which are amazing if you've never had them. If you're starving and your kids have eaten all your food, it might as well be like a 5-course meal.
Especially if they're sent by God like
that. Oh my gosh. We will never forget that pack of Lance crackers just floating down. I don't know. We have no idea where it came from. We didn't have them. There wasn't a group right behind us that whatever. I have no idea where they came from, and it literally came right between our 2 kayaks.
How fortunate! That's nice.
So that's our a couple of great memories from here.
People say sometimes, why haven't you grown as big as NOC or something like that? Some of the other outfitters, and the answer is there's a bunch of answers, but one of them is the Nantahala is a dam-controlled river, so they release regularly every day. We're a God-controlled river, I call it. Yeah. So whatever he chooses to give us is what we have to paddle in.
That's right.
And in the spring, our river's a lot better than it is in the late summer. But it's beautiful in its own way in the late summer whenever it's low.
Yeah. Yeah. We typically come sometimes in June, sometimes we've come as late as the 3rd week in July, and. I mean, there's areas that you're gonna hit bottom, and you have to get out and walk a little bit, but it's not walking a lot, and there's worse places to walk.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's like you're gonna have such a good time, you're not really gonna worry about that, and for most people, you'll be able to tell after the first time or two you hit a rock how to look for, and your guides do a good job of trying to help people that don't know how to really read water. have a little bit of introduction on how to do that. So
you know what I always tell people is, if the water's low and your kayak takes you up on a rock, the first thing you should do when you're taking up on a rock is be thankful that you're not having to paddle, and take a minute and look around at how beautiful it is.
That's right. That's a great way to say it.
It is. I mean, and if you spin around backwards, gosh, you get to look upstream, and that's even prettier.
That's right. Yeah.
So take advantage of that rock.
And you're in elementary school rapids. Like you're
But
not.
you know what? I want to say something about that, because you mentioned something earlier. Some of the spots of the river are deep, and some of the spots, whenever it's running at like 2.6 or we run between 2 feet and 3 feet on the leaf gauge. So when it's running at 2.6, there's one hole that'll keep you pretty good. So it won't keep you, but it rolls your boat if you go over it sideways. I always tell people, either go forward or go backwards, but don't go sideways. Right. So we do a safety before everybody goes on the river. We do a review of the boat. We make sure everybody has a PFD, that it fits. We make sure everybody wears a helmet, because rapids are made of rocks, and rocks are hard things. And 83% of all drowning in the United States, the people were not wearing a PFD. So it's critical to us, and it's important to us, and we tell them, wear your PFD and don't take it off while you're coming down the river. Don't take your helmet off either. I will be honest and say 60% of the people keep their helmet on, 40% of them take it off anyway. But I've been paddling for 30 years, and I paddle with people that paddle a lot longer than that, and they will not let me paddle with them if I'm not wearing my helmet. Yep. Because everybody's thinking, oh, my head's fine, but what they're not thinking about is Sally, who's going to have to take care of you, doesn't know squat about fixing a head injury in the middle of a river. So if you're thinking about your group, you wear a helmet. If you're thinking about yourself, you don't. And we really tell people to wear your helmet, and for God's sakes, don't take off that PFD. Yeah. If you get hot, tip over.
Yeah. Go park on the side, hang out in the river.
Jump in.
Yep. And you'll cool off real quick.
Yep. And that's the way to take care of it. You've got to be safe.
Talk us through just a couple logistics when people are scheduling times to come here, when they're here. It's not like you walk in, you sign the waiver, and then in 3 minutes you're on the water. You've got shuttles, you've got your safety orientation, just some quick mechanics, logistics of how people actually make reservations to actually getting on the water.
All right, let's just run a quick walkthrough. Let's say you want to go paddling next weekend. You can go on our website, which is wildwoodoutfitters.com, and in the middle of it there's a thing that says book your trip now, so you click on that. It shows you the different kinds of boats that you can choose from, because we have 5 different boats. They're all solo, they're all sit on top kayaks, but some are single, some are tandem, some are rubber, some are plastic. And so you choose that, then it'll take you to the date. You choose your date when you want to go. There's an option if the boats are all booked that day, then you won't be able to reserve. If it's for Section 1, it'll tell you to call us before you come up there. But you'll make your normal reservation. Let's say you're going to do what 90% of the people do. You're going to come down Section 3. You book your reservation. You come up the day of the reservation. We take people up on the hour, so 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, and 2. We go up to 1:15, and that's when the reservations happen. We ask everybody to be in here half an hour before your trip. So you come in, you'll park, pay your parking fee to the DNR site, because like I said, we are a concessionaire with DNR. Come on in here, sign the waiver, confirm your trip with us if you booked it on reservation. If you haven't made a reservation, just say we want to go and see if and 99% of the time there's boats available. All right. And then I'll say, all right, that's cool. I'll take your money. I'll give you a shuttle chip to get you back on the shuttle ride. Then I'll just say, meet me 10 minutes before the hour. We'll go over to a little theater area we made in the back where a boat's sitting there. We show you how to use the boat, how to buckle everything in. Get your PFD, make sure it fits, make sure your helmet's good, give you a paddle. So you're all prepped there. And then we'll go over the map of the trip with you so you can see where the different rapids are. Most people forget, but there's a couple rules. All our big rapids are on the left. Most of the fast water, that's the rest of the trip's going to be on the right. That's what people remember, although I spend 10 minutes going over the map. And then we try on the hour to leave. We put your boat on a shuttle van that we have here. We put you in the van. We take you 5-6 miles up the road, and we'll help you get in the water, and we'll wish you luck.
Yeah.
And remind you that there's really nowhere else to get out along the way. and we'll see you in a couple hours.
Yeah.
And then you paddle on down here to the next bridge, and our dock's there, and you get out.
Yeah.
And
can't get lost.
Can't get lost. It's really hard to get lost.
The river goes one direction. Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So that's it, and then you're done. And it takes, if I was going to plan a normal day, I'd probably plan 4 hours. If I was going to be here at noon, I'd plan on leaving probably about 4. If I was going to be here at 10, I'd plan on leaving about 2.
Yeah.
And that gives you time to paddle down the river peacefully, stop at a couple of the favorite sandbars or beaches, skip some rocks if you want to skip rocks, watch people tip over in the rapids. That's always fun. And then get back. So 4 hours is a good time to come.
Yeah. That's usually we budget. We typically budget the whole day because we'll come up. Typically we'll come 10, 11ish. We'll put our lunches or whatever we're gonna have in. I don't even know, it's dry sack.
Dry bag.
Yeah, dry bag. And then we'll get out somewhere usually 3-ish, and then our family tradition is right down the road there's a Dairy Queen, and so on the way home we stop at Dairy Queen, everybody gets ice cream or whatever, and it's a full day, but it's not like a harried day, and it's just one of those things. Touched on this in different podcasts over the last couple of years. It's one of those things, like, we've had so much life reset in the last couple of years with COVID, and I don't even know if we're post-COVID or we just figured out how to deal with it. I don't know, but people wanting to kind of get some life elements back to, quote, the way they used to be, or the way they were when they were growing up, or life experiences that they had when they were a kid. Like, this is one of those things that that's why, a number of the reasons that I've already mentioned why we come back, but it's one of those things, like, doesn't matter what's going on. Like, guess what? You're not taking work phone calls on the river. If you do, you'll make one, and then your phone will be deactivated because it'll be wet. And you have, nobody's arguing at each other for directions because you have one direction to go. You have multiple places you can stop and just rest and hang out, so you don't have to worry about one person's like the diehard person and doesn't want to break, and somebody else doesn't want to paddle at all. Like, you're all probably going to go pretty much the same speed because that's the current of the river. And so many different things, but then at the end of the day, everybody's gassed, and like, everybody's going to have a good night's sleep. Like, it's wonderful.
Yeah. It makes Dairy Queen delicious.
And bring sunscreen because just like there's nowhere to shortcut, there are no sunscreen stands on the way down either. So that's one of those. I think the first year we went down, I don't know why I didn't think of it, but my wife and I's shins were so sunburned because you just don't think about, like, you go to the beach, you don't really put sunscreen on your shins most of the time. Yeah,
but when you're sitting in a sit-on-top kayak, they're right out there in front of you.
So anyway, anything we've not touched on that you just want to mention?
I want to mention a couple things. I really am trying to grow our race series, and there's a race in May, there's a race in July, and there's a race in August. They make up the series.
Okay.
Last year they were won by our lead guy we call Big Water Larry. Because one day the river rose. We tried to run it from 2 feet to 3 feet.
Yeah.
He ran it at 22 feet. The boats in our boathouse were floating in the boathouse.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And then another time he fell out of his boat at Buck Island and went all the way to Horseshoe. That's like 4 miles in 12 minutes out of his boat. The water was running big that day too. Yeah. He and a couple of friends, Mike Latore, who's also one of our guides. They came out the next day when the water was only running like 10 feet to look for their materials. So I hired them the day after that. Because if they're willing to run that. So they do lead our trips down. Yeah. And we do beginner trips. We're starting to do beginner trips on Saturdays for people that want to get into kayaking but don't know a group to go with. And they're led by either Larry or by Mike down the river on Saturday afternoons. And then we got the race series. I want to point that one coming out. I want to mention a guy, Eddie Allen, who's been here for, I mentioned the Gales, and I mentioned Carl Kirkpatrick as being key elements of this, but also another guy, Eddie Allen, who has been here. I don't know any person in White County that loves the river more than Eddie Allen. He's probably paddled, if I say thousands of miles, I'm not doing him justice. So he's been down here, and he's worked here for us forever, but he ended up with cancer last year. And he had to leave us at the end of the season. So we had a big thing at the end of the year we called Eddie Fest. and we were trying to raise, a couple $1,000, and we raised much, much more than that for him. And he's up in Cleveland, and he tries to get down here. He came down and paddled a couple weeks ago. But we'll have Eddie Fest again at the end of the year this year, and I want to make sure I acknowledge Eddie Allen, because he's been a key element of this river for the last, since class of 70 whatever in White County High School. Yeah, and he loves it. So I want to wish him well, and I hope that everybody will keep him in mind in his prayers. And then the other thing is, I just want to say what you said. I think you called it an emotional reset. Emotional reset, spiritual reset. The river's a great place to come for that. It is. It's a chance to come with a close friend. We never recommend paddling alone, but come with a close friend who will give you some space if you need it, and enjoy the river and help yourself get reset. Teach your kids about the river. We're trying to work more with Scout, and with camps. We have over 360 kids come from Woodlands Camp in Cleveland every year. So introduce them to the river. Let them know about the outdoors. North Georgia, as you said, is one of the most beautiful places. I've been very fortunate to travel a lot of the world, and I love North Georgia. In the spring, on Mother's Day weekend, when the mountain laurel's out, it's one of the most beautiful places, and paddling down the river is absolutely beautiful when all the mountain laurel's out. So introduce your family to it. Get up here, enjoy it with the kids. Get a reset for yourself. Or just come up with the guys, or do a business outing. We do an outreach program for businesses, where we do team building and stuff. So much you could do.
That is a great idea.
And we're only an hour and a half from the city.
Yeah.
Man, you want to get your team together? Throw one of them into into a rapid and give the other guy a rope. Yeah. All of a sudden you depend on somebody.
That's right. Circle of trust. Real quick on the race series, who's the race series for?
The race series is for everybody. Again, we're only a Class 2 rapid. only a Class 2 river. So our races in the past have been downriver races, where you start A and you go to Z. Last year we had a couple of those. Our first race was a relay race where you actually switched boats with the guy midway down at one of the rapids. Yeah. So the idea there was the guy who didn't know your boat at all had to go over the biggest rapid. We made the switch right in front of the rapid. That was kind of fun, but it was a little bizarre and different. The second one we raced from top of Section 2 to the bottom of Section 3. And then the third one was just a straight Section 3 race. But then we, at the end of it all, we give everybody the same boat, our Torrance, and we let everybody start at the same time. The other races are a minute apart. The racers are. Put 50 boats out there at one time and you'll go. It makes for some entertainment at the rapids.
That's awesome.
So everybody's welcome. Yeah. Everybody's welcome in it, and everybody can race. Yeah. And everybody's just learning to race. We have people drift in that are good. But you know what? And you know what? We give them a piece of driftwood mounted to a trophy case if they win.
That's awesome.
Made by Eddie Allen, our river artist.
Those dates are on your website? As far as the race dates?
On the website, and then also on our Facebook page. Okay. We welcome everybody to come up and enjoy the beauty and the peace that's the river.
One of the things I like to do before every episode is what I call lightning round question, which is a question that has nothing to do with anything. Best movie or book that you have read in the last year, and then most impactful over the course of your life?
The best book that I've read in the last year, the one that immediately comes, I started reading Audible books. I consider them reading. Yeah,
that counts.
Was probably this sounds crazy, but the memoirs of William Tecumseh Sherman. His life story. It was a very interesting. Wow. I just thought of him as a badass that came and kicked everybody's ass in Atlanta. But he actually was like a smart guy that did a lot of stuff afterwards. And once you understand and read the tactics of a general like that, who was a general of productivity as opposed to some of the other ones in the Civil War, you understand the reasons that he did different things. I never want to support burning my neighbor's house, but at the same time, you could get a little bigger view. And his relationship with Grant and with Lincoln was all. So I read Grant's autobiography and also Lincoln's Sandberg's biography of Lincoln last summer.
I had Grant's autobiography on my audiobook list, and then I looked at how many hours. I think it was like
37 hours. It was ridiculously long.
It was easily 5 times longer than any audiobook I've ever even seen a time on. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what It's like, is this the Encyclopedia Britannica, like, full course?
Yeah.
And so it was intriguing. I'm like, oh my gosh, like almost 40 hours of Audible content. Like, this got to be amazing. But I don't know if I have the, like, longevity for that.
It's a stop, listen to the masters for a few days and go back to it kind of thing. But, Sherman's was the same way. But they get into those letters from orders given, on this date in this battle. Right. And it was very interesting to learn all about that, though. I wish I had an interest in actually learning when I was in college.
Yeah. Well, I never got into reading until after I graduated. And then I was like, oh, I actually like reading books that I want to read or have interest in, not ones that I have to.
My favorite movie of all times is The Razor's Edge with Bill Murray.
I don't know if I've seen that. I've seen a bunch of Bill Murray. I don't know if I've seen it.
It's not a comedy.
Really?
It's not a comedy. It's a book that I would say changed my life. For sure. Totally changed my objectives as far as material versus spiritual.
Yeah.
So The Razor's Edge by Bill Murray, it was definitely my favorite movie. And I don't have any trouble when people ask me that. I also love the music, man. But but as far as, I'm a seeker. Different people are different things, and I'm a seeker. And The Razor's Edge was the movie that put me in that direction. And probably the book that drove me down here and supported that same thing from The Razor's Edge was a book called Siddhartha by Herman Hesse, the same guy that wrote Steppenwolf. I love that book. I love that book because it reminded me of a lot of the same challenges and things that I've gone through and what I needed to do to keep the priority on the right stuff. So that is Siddhartha by Herman Hesse.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this part of why I asked the lightning round question is selfishly because I'm always interested in books that I haven't read or haven't come across.
Have you read any Viktor Frankl?
Yes.
The logotherapy?
Yes.
That psychotherapy should be directed against the meaning of life as opposed to sexual or... he says that there's a group of people, and I know that it applies because it's me, who doesn't really care about material wealth or doesn't really care about, isn't totally driven through whatever Freud's approach was. But some people are driven by seeking their meaning in life.
Yeah.
And that's, and he was a psychologist or psychiatrist in the Russian concentration camps. And then he came out and did the rest of his stuff. That was probably my second favorite book in the last year.
Cool. Best ways or easiest ways for people to find you, your website again, social media, phone number.
Yep, reservations you can make online at our website, which is www.wildwoodoutfitters.com. Or you can call and make the reservations. To be honest, like I said, we're not heavily staffed, so a lot of times you get the message. Reservations online are the best way to go. Or you can call us at 706-865-4451. We're only open Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays in this month, and then we'll add Thursdays next month. But I pick up my messages when I come in at the end of the week or at the beginning of the weekend. And then our Facebook page, Wildwood Outfitters. I would love for you to visit those, and if you have any questions, give us a call for sure.
Yeah, well, that's like our cue. That's the first two cars pulling in the parking lot, so it's time for us to go.
Hey, thanks a lot for coming by.
Thanks
a lot for giving us the time.
This is, like I said, selfishly, this was 2 years of my wish list, and one of the reasons we do the podcast is just to give people places to go to actually, as our tagline, embrace life where you live. And
well, you know what?
A great place for it.
Let me invite you to come back as my guest for the chance that you're getting our name out here to people via this podcast. Cool. And let me say that anybody who comes and says that they heard about us on the podcast, I'll give them 10% off.
Awesome.
All right?
That'll work.
And thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. This is the North Georgia Life Podcast. Embrace life where you live.